Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. Earlier this year, I had perhaps the best interview I have had in my career. And it wasn't because of the outcome of the interview or the application of that position. It was because after it, regardless of the outcome, I was so confident and had so much clarity around one of my professional strengths, which is building evaluation capacity within an organization. The process of developing a really targeted application where I show this strength, the great conversations I had during the interview around my skills and experiences in this area were in a way grounding and validating, and they reinforced what I already know, where I am in my career, what is the value that I bring to the table, and what is my worth right now. And I want to acknowledge that there's privilege in being in a situation where you can have this experience regardless of the outcome. Because many people have a lot in the line when they are applying for a job. But nonetheless, what this experience taught me is how important it is to be connected with your story and what it is that you are offering and bringing to the table. And how really anchoring on this helps deal with rejections. In this last episode of the Healthy Job Search Mindset series, I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of connecting with your story. I know that listeners are eager to start talking about applying for jobs, developing resumes, developing cover letters, preparing for interviews. This is a first and required step to be successful in an application. It's often a step that we don't put much thought into, but my goal is to convince you that it is extremely important to improve the quality of your application, but also to serve as a tool to help you build resiliency so that you can be successful and stay in the game for longer until you reach your goals. In the previous episodes in this series, we talked about the many reasons that could be behind rejections when you are applying for jobs. We also talked about how many candidates you're competing against, how little time people are going to spend reviewing your resume or your cover letter when you first apply for a job. And all of this to say is that you really need to stand out. How do you set yourself apart from all the other applicants, especially when you are competing against people with similar experience, with similar training, and so on? The answer is your story. The narrative about who you are and the unique value that you bring. Your story can include different narratives and evolve throughout your career. It can include things like your passion, why you were interested in following the profession that you're in. It can include your values and how they show up in your approach to the work that you do. At times, it could also be your lived experience, especially if your lived experience is associated with the type of work you do or has influenced your approach and your methodologies. And a big part of your story are your strengths. What sets you apart? Even if you fulfill all the qualifications in a job posting, what are your biggest strengths, your secret sauce that makes you a unique and valuable candidate? As you progress throughout your career, you're going to be developing this story and it's going to change. You're going to have different experiences. You're going to develop different skills. You're going to do inner work intentionally or not intentionally to help you understand how the unique aspects that you bring influence your work and the value that they add. But regardless of where you are in your career, even if this is the very first professional job in your field that you are applying for, you have a story. There's a reason why you approach work and perform a task in a project in a different way than someone with a similar training and experience. You bring a uniqueness in you that can be an asset to a position you're applying for. Identifying our passions, identifying our values, and understanding how these influence the way in which we do work to create a narrative and our story is a process that can take some time, and a process that will also continue to evolve as you have more experiences in your career. There are several resources, coaching exercises that you can use to start exploring these things And I'm leaving a few examples of resources in the descriptions of this episode. But for this episode, I wanted to focus on identifying your strengths. The reason why I think this is a very important step ahead of the coming episodes is that these strengths are going to really be the meat of your resume and your application. I want to share with you a simple exercise that you can do to start distilling and understanding what your strengths are. It's simple. It's going to require thinking through some questions, writing them down, journaling if that's what you like to do. This exercise will help you connect with what your strengths are and the value that you add, which is going to increase your confidence when you start applying for jobs and when you hear rejections as well. The exercise is pretty simple. I'm going to ask you to think of 3 or 5 instances in your career, it could also be on your studies, where you were at your best. 3 or 5 moments that you are really proud of or felt really connected and excited to do the work that you're doing. And you're going to answer the following questions. What was the situation? Describe what was happening, what the project was, what you were trying to solve. What did you accomplish? This can be a result, a learning, impacting someone's life, whatever it is that comes to mind that inspired you to choose this specific event. In the next step, I want you to think about what skills you used or showed in this event. And the last question that I want you to think about and write is, what does this story reveal about you and your strengths? So again, just reviewing the questions. What was the situation? What did you accomplish? What skills did you use in the process? And what does this story reveal about you and your strengths? And I'm going to give you an example just so that you know how this works and to make it easier for you if you're getting a little bit stuck. I'm going to use an example that I've already shared a little bit about in my podcast, but it's the first one that came to my mind when I was doing this exercise. In my organization, I bonded with a dear friend of mine over our frustration of realizing that the consent forms that we were required to use in surveys and interviews had such a complex language and were so long that we felt it was a huge barrier for participation for the people we serve and we work with. So we decided to develop a plain language version of this consent form. After many months of negotiating with our privacy department, I think it even went to our legal department, and with a few other decision makers to help us advocate for this change, we ended up accomplishing this plain language form that had a much lower readability level to be approved and used across the organization. It took a lot of time, but we ended up accomplishing it. When thinking about this experience and the skills that I used during this event, the things that come to mind is taking action, engaging someone, in this case my friend, being reciprocal, collaborating with them, and taking action to create a change over something that we both thought should be changed. I also had to use persuasion skills to convince other teams to accept this and to see the importance of making our surveys and our data collection more inclusive and the value that this could bring to our organization. What this story reveals about me is that I am a person that likes to take action and create change. And I don't only like that, but I actually thrive. And my work satisfaction is high when I have support to do this type of work. In contrast, being in environments where I feel like I'm complacent and not able to act or influence positive change is not as rewarding for me. Knowing this is my strength can increase my confidence because I know the value that I add. It will also help me assess different work environments if I happen to have the option and the privilege to choose my next job. For example, I may ask during an interview, knowing that this is important for me, can you please give me an example where someone in your team was supported to change an established process in order to improve it? Working through this exercise can also make it easier for you to answer interview questions if they do happen to overlap with some of your strengths. So, for example, let's say I go to an interview and I am asked, can you tell me about a time where you led change in your organization. And I think most importantly, working through this exercise can really help you understand what your strengths are and what sets you apart from your classmates, your colleagues, people at similar stages in your career. It can also be a reminder, especially if you have it in writing, that you have a lot to offer, that you have strengths that could benefit any organization and any position. So that is what I'm hoping you do with 3 or 5 events that come to mind as being the ones that you're most proud of in your career. Go back to this and reconnect with your strengths, with the value that you bring to the table, whenever you need to, whenever the job searching process is challenging. It will help you bounce back, and it will help you tell your story more effectively. If you haven't listened to the other 2 episodes of our series, I really recommend that you do. I think our experiences applying for work can be different if we frame it in a different way and we start with ourselves, taking care of our well-being, of our mindset, reconnecting with our strengths, and building our resiliency. Searching for a job can be challenging, but there are many things you can do to support yourself throughout the process. This is the end of this series. I'm so excited for the episodes coming up, where we're going to start talking about resumes, differences across countries, cover letters, interviewing, and all that fun stuff that many people have questions about. If you have specific questions or content that you would like me to cover on the upcoming episodes, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn or leave comments on this episode, and we'll try to cover them. Thank you.